Exodus chapter 39. From the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, they made finely woven garments for ministering in the sanctuary. They made the holy garments for Aaron, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He made the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and finely spun linen. They hammered out the gold into thin sheets and cut threads to interweave with the blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and the fine linen, the work of a skilled craftsman. They made shoulder pieces for it, attached to two of its corners so it could be joined together. The artistically woven band that was on it was of one piece with it and was made like it, of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely spun linen, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They mounted the onyx stones, set in gold filigree, and engraved them with the names of Israel's sons, as a gem cutter engraves a seal. He put them on the shoulder pieces of the ephod as stones of remembrance for the sons of Israel, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He made the breastpiece with a position for it, the work of a skilled craftsman, made like the ephod of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn and finely spun linen. It was square and folded double, 9 inches long and 9 inches wide. They mounted 4 rows of gemstones on it. The first row was a row of carnelian, chrysolite, and beryl. The second row, a row of turquoise, lapis lazuli, and emerald. The third row, a row of jacinth, agate, and amethyst. And the fourth row, a row of topaz, onyx, and jasper. They were mounted in gold filigree. The stones were for the names of the sons of Israel, 12 according to their names, engraved like a seal, each with its name for the 12 tribes. They made a chain of pure gold, twisted like cords, for the breastplate. They also made 2 settings of gold and 2 gold rings, and they put the 2 rings on the 2 corners of the breastpiece. They attached the 2 gold chains to the rings at the corners of the breastpiece. 2 ends of the 2 cords they had attached to the 2 settings of filigree. In this way, they attached it in front to the shoulder pieces of the ephod. Then they made 2 rings of gold and put them at the 2 ends of the breastpiece, on its inside edge next to the ephod. They made 2 rings of gold and attached them in front to the lower part of the 2 shoulder pieces of the ephod at its joining above the decorated band of the ephod. They bound the breastplates by its rings to the rings of the ephod with a blue cord so that it should lie on the decorated band of the ephod and that the breastplate should not come loose from the ephod, as the Lord had commanded Moses. He also made the robe of the ephod woven all of blue yarn, and the opening of the robe in the middle of it was like the opening in a garment, with a binding around its edge so that it may not be torn. On the lower hem of the robe, they made a pomegranate of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, and of fine twisted linen. They also made bells of pure gold and put the bells between the pomegranates on the lower hem of the robe all around, between the pomegranates a bell and a pomegranate all around the lower hem of the robe for ministering, as the Lord had commanded Moses. They also made the tunics woven of fine linen for Aaron and his sons, and the turban of fine linen, and the headdresses of fine linen, and the linen undergarments of fine twisted linen, and the sash of fine twisted linen, and of blue, purple, and crimson yarns, embroidered with needlework as the Lord had commanded Moses. They made the rosette of the holy diadem of pure gold and wrote on it an inscription, like the engraving of a signet, Holy to the Lord. They tied it to a blue cord to fasten it on the turban above, as the Lord had commanded Moses. Thus all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting was finished. The Israelites had done everything just as the Lord had commanded Moses. Then they brought the tabernacle to Moses, the tent and all its utensils, its clasps, its frames, its bars, its pillars, and its bases, the covering of tanned ram skins, and the covering of fine leather, and the curtain for the screen. They brought the tabernacle to Moses, the tent and all its furnishings, the clasps, frames, crossbars, posts, and bases, the covering of ram skins dyed red, the covering of another durable leather, and the shielding curtain, the Ark of the Covenant with its poles and the atonement cover, the table with all its articles and the bread of the presence, the pure gold lampstand with its rows of lamps and all its accessories, and the oil for the light, the gold altar, the anointing oil, the fragrant incense, and the curtain for the entrance to the tent. the bronze altar with its bronze grating, its poles and all its utensils, the basin with its stand, the curtains of the courtyard with its posts and bases, the curtain for the entrance to the courtyard, the ropes and the tent pegs for the courtyard. All the furnishings for the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, were accounted for by name. Exodus chapter 40. The Lord spoke to Moses, "You are to set up the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, on the first day of the first month. Place the ark of the testimony there, and screen off the ark with the curtain. Bring in the table and set its arrangements in order. Also bring in the lampstand and set up its lamps. Place the gold altar for incense in front of the ark of the testimony, and put up the screen for the entrance to the tabernacle. Place the altar of burnt offering in front of the entrance to the tabernacle, the tent of meeting. Put the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it. Set up the courtyard all around and hang the screen for the gate of the courtyard. Take the anointing oil and anoint the tabernacle and everything in it. Consecrate it and all its furnishings so that it will be holy. Anoint the altar of burnt offering and all its utensils. Consecrate the altar so that it will be especially holy. Anoint the basin and its stands and consecrate them. Then bring Aaron and his sons to the entrance to the tent of meeting and wash them with water. Dress Aaron in the holy garments and anoint him and consecrate him so that he can serve me as a priest. Bring his sons and dress them in tunics. Anoint them just as you anointed their father, so that they may serve me as priests. Their anointing will be to a permanent priesthood throughout their generations." Moses did just as the Lord had commanded him. In the first month in the second year, on the first day of the month, the tabernacle was set up. Moses set up the tabernacle, he laid its bases and set up its frames, and put in its poles and raised up its pillars. And he spread the tent over the tabernacle, and put the covering of the tent over it as the Lord had commanded Moses. He took the covenant and put it into the ark, and put the poles on the ark and set the cover above the ark. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle, and set up the curtain for screening, and screened the ark of the covenant as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the table in the tent of meeting on the north side of the tabernacle outside the curtain, and set the bread in order on it before the Lord as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the lampstand in the tent of meeting opposite the table on the south side of the tabernacle, and he set up the lamps before the Lord as the Lord had commanded Moses. He put the golden altar in the tent of meeting before the curtain, and offered fragrant incense on it as the Lord had commanded Moses. He also put in place the screen for the entrance of the tabernacle. He set the altar of burnt offering at the entrance of the tabernacle of the tent of meeting, and offered on it the burnt offering and the grain offering as the Lord had commanded Moses. He set the basin between the tent of meeting and the altar and put water in it for washing. Moses and Aaron and his sons used it to wash their hands and feet. They washed whenever they entered the tent of meeting or approached the altar, as the Lord commanded Moses. Then Moses set up the courtyard around the tabernacle and altar and put up the screen at the entrance to the courtyard. Then the cloud covered the tent of meeting, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. Moses could not enter the tent of meeting because the cloud had settled on it, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. In all the travels of the Israelites, whenever the cloud lifted from above the tabernacle, they would set out. But if the cloud did not lift, they did not set out until the day it lifted. So the cloud of the Lord was over the tabernacle by day, and fire was in the cloud by night, in the sight of all the Israelites during their travels. Matthew chapter 24. As Jesus left and was going out of the temple, his disciples came up and called his attention to its buildings. He replied to them, "Do you see all these things? Truly I tell you, not one stone will be left here on another that will not be thrown down." While he was sitting on the Mount of Olives, the disciples approached him privately and said, "Tell us, when will these things happen? And what is the sign of your coming and of the end of the age?" Jesus replied to them, "Watch out that no one deceives you. For many will come in my name, saying, 'I am the Messiah,' and they will deceive many. You are going to hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, because these things must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise up against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these events are the beginning of labor pains. Then they will hand you over to be persecuted, and they will kill you. You will be hated by all nations because of my name. Then many will fall away, betray one another, and hate one another. Many false prophets will rise and deceive many. Because lawlessness will multiply, the love of many will grow cold. But the one who endures to the end will be saved. This good news of the kingdom will be proclaimed in all the world as a testimony to all nations, and then the end will come. So when you see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by the prophet Daniel, standing in the holy place, let the reader understand, then those in Judea must flee to the mountains. A man on the housetop must not come down to get things out of his house, and a man in the field must not go back to get his coat. Woe to pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days! Pray that your escape may not be in winter or on a Sabbath. For at that time there will be great suffering, such as has not been from the beginning of the world until now, no, and never will be. And if those days had not been cut short, no one would be saved. But for the sake of the elect, those days will be cut short.